All right, so on today's episode, we are talking about how to navigate change in your business, or better yet, how to steer change in your business when people may be reluctant to change, which as human beings, we often are. And I talk about this a lot. I teach AI workshops. I try to get businesses to own and adapt it. And one thing I've seen in my workshops, Justin, is that the business leaders, the entrepreneurs are very gung ho and excited about AI and automation and all this change, right? But the employees are so resistant, usually, not always, but usually the employees are a bit more resistant. And I think there's hesitation there because it's like, oh, am I just training my replacement, or this is AI slop? There'll be this negativity towards it and this resentment. Well, I even hear things like when I'm training a team, oh, well, AI can't do that. I have to be the one to do that because it needs my human touch. And I have this, it all boils down to like, well, I have this inherent knowledge in my brain, and that's why this process can't be automated. So how do we get people to adopt, embrace, lean into change that will ultimately benefit the organization, and not be resistant to it? Welcome to King Moves. In chess, the king moves one step at a time, but that single move can change everything. Each week, we explore mindset shifts and simple actions that could lead to the next breakthrough in your business and life. I'm your co-host, Ethan King, from Atlanta, Georgia, USA, entrepreneur, TEDx speaker, and best-selling author of Wealth Beyond Money.
And I'm your co-host, Justin King, no relation to Ethan, from Cape Town, South Africa, entrepreneur, speaker, and business growth strategist. Our journey crosses continents and cultures as we think out loud, challenge assumptions, and uncover the small moves that create big momentum. Welcome to King Moves. Let's start the conversation.
Before we get into this matrix and the 6 images of change management, I would love to hear some stories, maybe from your life, your own businesses, or maybe clients that you coached about navigating change.
Yeah, it's a very interesting topic, a very relevant topic, and I don't think it will ever not be a relevant topic. That's the reality of change. Whenever I'm in a workshop, I usually start off by asking everyone, what makes us reluctant to change? That's the first question I ask, and nearly everybody gets it right, and they say it's fear of the unknown. It's what is on the other side of that. What is on the other side of that thing? Like I'm quite safe and secure, and even though the way that I'm working, the process that I'm using, whatever it is, even if that's not perfect, it's what I know. And what is on the other side of change, I don't know. It could be better, yes, but my default, my brain always tells me that it could be worse, and then I choose to stay the same. And there's a great line. It's people don't resist change. They resist being changed. So people don't resist change. They resist being changed. And there's something to that. It's not that I don't want to see the company evolve. It's not that I don't want to see my team evolve. But does that mean I've got to do something differently? Do I have to change the way that I am working? Because hey, man, I'm comfortable with the way I am. So that's always interesting for me. That's the first thing that comes up. The second thing that I will add, because we use that word or that term. We often hear managers and leaders saying, my team is resistant to change, or that individual is resistant to change. And sometimes, yes, sometimes that is the case. At other times, however, they're actually just, it takes effort to change. So there's a great story, and it came from Chip and Dan Heath, their book about change, which was called, what was it called? Gone blank. Gone blank. I wanted to say
Change book. Let's see. I've read all of their books. Oh, it's called Switch. How to
Switch.
change when things are hard.
Yeah. And they tell a great story in there about the two groups, groups of individuals were led into a room. The one group was told that, and there were some delicious freshly baked cookies placed on the table in front of them, and then a bowl of radishes. And one group were told that they were allowed to eat the cookies, and the other group were told they had to resist eating the cookies, and they were only allowed to eat the radishes. But that part of the experiment finished. Well, they told everyone, well, that's done. And then they took them to do what they thought was completely unrelated, but they had to solve a puzzle. And it was one of those puzzles where you put your pen on the paper and you have to complete the maze or whatever it is without lifting your pen. Little did the participants know that these had been designed to be impossible to complete. So each of
Mm.
these groups went at it trying to complete this puzzle, complete this maze. And the group that were allowed to eat the cookies, they continued for something like 17 minutes trying to figure it out. And then the team that weren't allowed to eat the cookies, but they were allowed to eat the radishes, they gave up after something like 8 or 9 minutes. And what the whole
Mm.
point of the story was, and what they were speaking about, was that it burns willpower. That the fact that they had been sitting there in that room, not allowed to eat the cookies, took willpower. Now, when they went into the room and they went into the next part of the experiment, next part of the test, they had to complete this maze. It takes willpower to keep trying
Mm.
to do something, which they didn't have too much left, which is why they didn't stay on the course for as long as the other group. And when we look at it from a change lens or change perspective, trying something new, using a new process burns willpower. So very often we say that our team is resistant or they're lazy to change, but actually what they've done is they're really trying, but it takes willpower to not do the old thing, but do the new thing, which I thought was a really interesting way to look at it. It's not a
Mm.
get out of jail free card for everyone, but it's very important for business owners to keep in mind. It takes willpower to not to do the thing the old way. So how do we make it as easy as
Right.
possible to do the new thing?
Right.
I
Because
could
I
go on
remember
and on.
the big aha from that experiment in that book was that willpower is finite. We have a
Correct.
limited amount of willpower per day. So if you burn it all up on deciding whether to eat cookies or radishes, well, now you don't have it for this other thing. Like your tank is empty. So don't depend on willpower for change. So if willpower isn't the answer, how do we get a team to adopt change? Or like we'll just use AI for example, good because that's what I'm dealing with all the time. And where I've seen some success is getting people to see the small wins first, like just getting them to get a taste of it, hands on themselves first. Whether it's just having AI, like first customizing your AI to sound like you, and then having it respond to an email, like draft an email response for you. And then once people see, like, oh, I get it, like you see that light bulb go off, and I see that all the time in my workshops, whether it's having AI like write a blog post for them or something really, really simple that we all do, but doing it in a way where it's custom to their voice. I start to see that light bulb go off. And I had a meeting with this guy the other day, Ed Cox, and he hired me to train his team. He just sat in my workshop 4 weeks ago, and he said when he first came to our workshop, he didn't know what a GPT was besides the three letters after the word chat. 4 weeks, fast forward 4 weeks, and now he has built a whole library of custom GPTs for his law practice that he uses all the time. I mean, if you met this guy, you would think he's an AI pro, and he's like showing his team, you can do this and do that and do this. So once that light bulb goes off and people see how this helps and not hinders them, then that's when people adopt change. But I think the first key is giving them a small win.
I'm with you on that, 100%. I think maybe there's one step before that, and I don't want to hog the mic here because we want to step into the framework that you want to reference as well. But
Mm-hmm.
the other really important thing is just to understand that when it comes to change, that emotion is involved. That's the reality. And in fact, we look at the the 5 stages of grief, and the change curve, the emotional change curve, the Kubler-Ross change curve follows the stages of grief as well. And we've
Mm.
got to realize that. So for anybody that wants to just know what they are, it's denial, frustration, depression, experiment, decision, and integration. So as soon as you hear the news or rumor of a change or the change gets implemented, that's when we kind of drop off and our performance starts getting impacted. And we go into first thing is denial. Oh, surely this can't be happening. Then we start expressing that we're pissed off about it, we're frustrated about it. We get further down into this trough that impacting our performance. And before we kind of bottom out, we get quite depressed. We're like dragging our feet to work. I can't believe this bullshit's happening again. It's the
Mm.
usual story. And then at that stage, we've got to tell our team, well, guys, that the change has happened, and what you are allowed to do is you're absolutely allowed to be frustrated and be annoyed about it for sure. Like that
Mm-hmm.
happens. What I'm not going to be willing to accept is that you stay there. That's what we got to say as leaders. They'll hopefully get to the depression, kind of start bottoming out, and that's when they get into the experiment part. So they start really embracing this thing which you've asked of them, the new process, implementing GPTs, whatever it is. So we start experimenting with those, and we start realizing, hey, this isn't so bad. Like, yes,
Mm.
there's a bit of back and forth. Some work, some don't. Then we make a decision about going all in on the change. And then at the next point is full integration. We see that there's upside. Our work is far more efficient and all of those things. But they've gone through this change curve, emotional change curve. So that's a huge thing for business owners to realize that our team are going to feel those things. And
Yeah.
remember that by the time a lot of change is communicated to your team, you and your leadership team have been able to sit with it for a while.
Hmm.
So you've been speaking about it. You've been speaking about it. Your leadership team as well may have been like, oh, this is another change. We don't really like it. They've already gone through the frustration, the depression, the denial, all of that. They've come out of the on the other side. And then when we mention it to our team, we further along than our team. And then we start saying, hey man, these guys are resistant to change.
Hmm.
Just got to realize they're still catching up. They're catching up and they're allowed to. It's a, it, when you realize that, it's actually quite liberating that they are going to be annoyed. There is going to be some frustration. Don't get me wrong. They're also going to be your change champions who just grab it and run. But some
Right.
people just take a little bit longer. So it's not that they
Right.
can't. It's just that we're going to say to them, you're not getting stuck there. We'll support and help you all we can.
Yeah. That's a good breakdown. So how quick can we get somebody to that experimental phase?
Correct.
Then that's where they can see the small wins. And personality plays a part in it too. If you have like your disc personality, your driver, your influencer, your steadiness, and then what's the C for? Like your computational or something. But people who are a high S are very, very resistant to change. The high S's on the disc profile, those are people who do the same exact thing every single day. Like eat the oatmeal for breakfast at 9:03 a.m. and have the fork to the left. Somebody who's an extreme
Yeah.
S would be that, and they do not like if you try to throw a new technology at them or something like that, they are going to be hyper resistant to it. So it also helps to know your people's personality types. But let's jump into what this book says because I found
Yeah.
this fascinating. They have a matrix that they call the images of change. And if you imagine this like 2x3 matrix where you have three outcomes, change outcomes, intended outcomes, partially intended, and unintended outcomes. And then with those three outcomes, you can be a controller or you could be one who shapes those outcomes. So on the controlling side of it, it's like designing the roles and activities. And they call this first role a director. And that the director on the controlling quadrant directing to get intended outcomes. Or if you're a shaper on the shaping side, you're a coach. So a coach, and you're a coach, so you know this, a coach doesn't direct you to do anything, doesn't tell you exactly what to do, right? So there's a big difference between director and coach, but the end result is still the intended change.
Yeah. That's right. And the difference there is it's an empowering. So
Mhm.
you're either telling or you're empowering. Director would be telling, move here, do this, do it that way. You have to. Coach is empowering you to come up with, to make your own mind up that that is the best way to move forward. Like adopting the change is the best way for me as an individual, best way for the team, best way for the organization. That would be stepping into the coaching role, shaping. I like that.
Yeah. And then if you go down the matrix to our partially intended outcomes, on the controlling side, you have the navigator, and then on the shaping side, you have the interpreter. So what I've noticed, and I think that this is kind of where I'm falling right now when it comes to the AI and automation consulting that I'm doing in the training, I'm more so of the navigator when a company brings me in. It's like, I'm going to show you, here's exactly where you go. Here's exactly what you do based on the bottlenecks that I see in your business. Whereas the person who hired me, who's usually the CEO or the COO, they're more so the interpreter of what I'm teaching. But we're both working together to get those partially intended outcomes. Honestly, they are partially intended because we don't always get everyone to adopt 100% of the changes all at once. And I think that's a bit unrealistic. They have to get there over time. What are your thoughts on the navigator versus the interpreter?
Yeah, I need to dive into this matrix to fully understand that. But again, I think the interpreter, for me, the way I'm reading it right now, and I may be misunderstanding, is a big part of what we have to do is we have to communicate well. And a lot of the time, the way that we communicate to the rest of our team as we go down the whatever we want to call it, the hierarchy or whatever within our organization, we've got to do a lot of interpretation. So
Mm-hmm.
interpreting, I mean, it's a case of how do I articulate this so that it lands with this particular team, with this particular department? Because the way I've articulated it to my leadership team, the same way is not going to land here. So it's not just about pointing in the right direction, which I think is the controlling thing. It's pointing in the right direction and just saying, again, stepping into director role and saying, go. Interpreter is, how do I take what is Spanish, that we've been speaking, translate that to the Portuguese to interpret it in a way that's really going to resonate with this team right now, or this department, so that, again, we're shaping the outcome and they can choose. I think choice is the big word, one of the main words that we have here. People choose to adopt the change. And for me, that's what interpretation would be about. But I may be misinterpreting it right now.
I think you got it, because interpreter is, the navigator is controlling, right? So it's like a manager that has to identify options, where the interpreter is helping people make sense of it. Because a lot of times, if you're missing people, a lot of times people are resisting the change because they just don't get, okay, how does this connect to my life? How does this benefit me? They don't see the big picture. So that interpreter plays a vital role in making them understand how it clicks. One of the stories that it talks about in this book is J.C. Penney, which I don't know if they were global, but it was a big company here in the U.S., a department store. And J.C. Penney was always known for having these like sales and coupons and stuff. And there was a time a few years ago, maybe, I don't know, 20 or so years ago, where they brought in a new CEO, and that new CEO first thing he did was get rid of all the coupons. And people internally were obviously very resistant to that. They were like, no, this is part of the brand's identity. And he was like, no, we're losing a bunch of money because y'all are always having things on sale. So he got rid of all the sales. Well, guess what? Company went out of business. And because it was true, like that was part of their core. And, they obviously did need some change, but that wasn't the right change. And I feel like that leader didn't come in and really pay attention to what was going on. So one thing I try to do when I come into an organization is, like, let's not disrupt. Let's not just immediately stop doing things the way that they were. Keep doing what you're doing, but let's add in this one little thing right here. I want you to just try this out and see how it helps this one little task over here. Because I believe that AI isn't meant to replace people, but to replace tasks, especially the mundane tasks. And who wants to be doing mundane tasks? Like, if you're a B player and your only job is to do mundane, repetitive tasks, then yeah, you need to be worried about your job, because AI will take your job. But for everyone else who is striving for more and who actually has to think in their job, and you like being an A player and you hate the repetitive tasks, the admin work that just has to get done, then AI is great. And once people see that, oh, AI can get rid of this stuff I don't want to have to do, and I can just kind of manage AI a little bit and focus on the things that I really enjoy, where I can put my humanity in it. I think once people see that, then they embrace it a bit more.
I like, let's move on. I'm so curious about the last two in this matrix.
Yeah, so with unintended change, is the last part of the matrix, and we have two roles. The controlling role is the caretaker, and the shaping role is the nurturer. So the caretaker may be like, usually this is a manager, because it says controlling. So the manager believes that external factors largely determine the outcome, and their role is to smooth out transitions rather than controlling the occurrence of them. So the way I understand it is that this is happening after the fact. The unintended changes already happened, and this is a little bit of damage control. So now the manager is being the caretaker, and the nurturer is the shaping part of it. So the nurturer assumes that even small changes can have large, unpredictable impacts. So while the manager, they have to enable positive self-organizing and keep letting people know, like nurturing people, like keeping the spirit high. Whereas, and this is my interpretation of it, whereas the caretaker is just more like damage control.
Yeah. But is this matrix saying that the nurturer gets unintended consequences, or is you should become a nurturer if you have got unintended outcomes rather than consequences, unintended outcomes from the change? You should then step into the nurturing role. Is that what the matrix is saying? That's what I was trying to understand.
I don't think that it's saying that one is better than the other. I think that they're saying that there are two parts to this.
Yeah.
There's the controlling side and the shaping side.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you probably really need both. If you're missing one, then change may not be as effective in your organization. So that's the way I understand it. And a lot of, if you look at it, it's kind of like a lot of these are kind of male female tendencies
Yeah.
too. And
Yeah.
not to be sexist, but just in a general sense.
Yeah. So I think I've got another way to maybe sum that up. And this comes from a Franklin Covey book, I think. Everyone Deserves a Great Manager. They speak about when it comes to change management, there's a I'm just trying to think like a limiting or a fixed mindset and an effective mindset. And limiting mindset when it comes to change is I control and contain change for my team. So this is for managers. I control and I contain change versus my team versus the effective mindset, which is I champion change with my team.
Mm-hmm.
And the difference between those two is when you say I control and contain, immediately what you're saying is I don't believe that my people, my team, can handle this change. So I've got to carry all of this weight on my shoulders. I'm not going to give them all the information. I'm going to control and contain what I share with them. It's all on me as the leader. It's all on me as the manager. And that's the worst way to do it. Whereas what you're wanting to do
Mm-hmm.
is champion change. You want to be
Yeah.
as transparent as possible within reason, but give everybody all the information. There's actually a
Right.
great example in the book where it was a true story, but there was a change being rolled out in an organization, and one of the individuals in the team actually stepped out the room, jumped on the phone, and phoned his wife and said, they would please phone the contractor that was going to come and do the new paving at our house and tell them not to come because we may not have budget for it. And it was a good story because change impacts people. And that's in
Mm-hmm.
that story, it was an extreme of it was impacting the employee's pocket because they whatever their salaries were going to change or the bonuses weren't going to be paid out. So this guy had to get on the phone and say, "Don't let the contractors come." And then, as I say, extreme example, but change impacts people. Like it
Mm-hmm.
does in some way. It either impacts them financially, it impacts enjoyment, impacts engagement, it takes away things that really enjoy doing at work, moves them away from sitting next to their buddy in the office, whatever it is. When change happens, the first thing that people start saying is, how does this impact me? What does this mean for me? And we've got to address
Right.
that. Everyone's asking it. We have to address it. So
Yeah.
to control and contain it doesn't work. To champion it, share as much as you can, and then walk the talk. That's what you've got to do in order to get the buy-in from your team.
Yeah, 100%. Though, and the word that you use, championing it, I think is the perfect word for it because you're not mandating it,
Yeah,
but being that champion is more on the shaping side of it.
great.
And I'll leave with this one because you just reminded me of an example in my own business at Zeus's Closet years ago. I read this book called 2 Second Lean by a gentleman named Paul Akers, and it's about just in time manufacturing and lean, like Six Sigma lean principles, and how he applied this in his business. And I said, this is great. We can apply this in our business. And the premise of the book is very simple. It's to challenge, to have everyone on your team, every single employee, take the first 30 minutes of their day making some improvement that will save them 2 seconds of time, that will make them 2 seconds more efficient. Okay, so you spend 30 minutes, your first 30 minutes, making a 2 second lean improvement. Now, that could be anything like so it's up to you in your workstation at your desk. Maybe it's moving your bin of paper from the left side of the desk to the right side of the desk because now there's 2 seconds less motion. Like maybe that was your lean improvement for the day. But everyone has to do it every single day. And then we got together and shared what our lean improvement was for the day. So sometimes they were very small things. Sometimes they were pretty big things. Like we reorganized the position of all of our machines in our production department one time because one of our employees had that idea. Well, that ended up helping us be 40% more efficient because people weren't having to walk all the way across the building and back into the next room 20, 30 times a day. And that adds up over years. So I didn't see that. Like one of my employees came up with that on his own because all I did was just kind of shape it. So as I'm looking at this matrix, it was more of these outcomes were partially intended. And I played the role of just kind of the navigator where I was like, yeah, we're going to do this every day. That was the only framework I gave.
Mm.
We all read the book and said, hey guys, we're going to do this every day. Spend the first 30 minutes every day making a 2 second lean improvement. And I left it up to them to interpret what that meant for their own personal workspace and their own role. And I think that was a success story for us.
I like that. That's a good share, a really good share. So if we start wrapping this up for listeners, how do we land it, Ethan? I think there've been a lot of nuggets. I think there've been a lot of nuggets already.
There's a lot of nuggets here. I think when you look at change in your organization, if you're a business leader listening to this and you wish that people were more receptive to change in your organization, then maybe go grab this book, look up this framework, managing organizational change, and you could probably just find this matrix online. But look at being more of a shaper instead of a director, and getting people to embrace change in your business. Give them some easy small wins and let them interpret what it means for themselves, and bring in someone else. A lot of times, and people tell me this all the time who hired me, it's like, if I tell this to my employees, they aren't going to listen to me, but they'll listen to you, Ethan. I could be saying the exact same thing that the boss is saying, but they love to listen to an outside person. That's why consultants exist, right?
Yeah.
So that would be my king move, is bring in someone else so that you have a champion of change.
I think my king move is less a move and more just an awareness thing. As a business owner, as a manager, separate the successful change outcome from the ability to successfully implement change. And what I mean by that is something that we glossed over is that terrifying stat of 70% of organizational change actually fails. So a lot of, and I need to dive deeper into that, because it's a broad blanket statement, but more often than not, the things that we want to work out don't always work out. And what we've got to realize is, whether we've had a successful outcome from the change or not, we still need to make sure that the change process is well managed, because the better we can manage that process, the better our team becomes at being able to adopt and implement change, so that the next time, and there will be a next time, the next time there is a change, it's easier for them. They've also built up that change resilience, and they're able to get on board and get it across the line. So it's not always about the outcome of the change that you're making. Success can also be, how well did we manage this change? That's really important.
Yeah.
I just want to think that that's really important to be aware of. And then a good closing quote for this is Robin Sharma, the fact that change is hard at the start, messy in the middle, and glorious at the end. And I think that sums it up.
That's great. We'll leave it there.
Thanks, Ethan.
That's a wrap for today's episode of King Moves. Remember, in chess, like in business, one right move can change everything. Take today's action step, make your move, and build momentum.
If you found value in today's episode, share it with someone who's ready for their next breakthrough, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss our weekly conversations. Until next time.